I'm not an anti-vax person.
So who cares? Why not do your own thing and let them say what they want?
Hey guys, what's up and welcome to my first video back in the condo. Okay, so I am getting dust all over myself, and in fact I have this you see this red spot here? I've been itching it because I think it's the dust. They have not cleaned this place yet, so it's very dirty, but not as dirty, like they've taken a bunch of the shit out of it. Whatever, we don't need to talk about that. I figured for the first video back in the condo, we would do something a little bit taboo. We're gonna talk today about COVID. Okay, so I have to put a disclaimer in the beginning because what YouTube does is YouTube will delete any video just outright that's about COVID for medical misinformation. Now, I understand the sentiment, and I also understand that they're allowed to do that because they're a private company, and I would always fight for the right of a private company. Well, not always. There's like a gray area with platforms and political figures, and it's just really it's a lot more complicated than meets the eye. It's a lot more complicated than the libertarian, I built this company, I can say or remove whoever I want, versus you are now the aggregate and the only way for anyone to get certain information, and you're stifling certain people's freedom of speech on your platform, which is your platform. It's kind of a weird thing, but anyway. So while they can do this, they can remove me for medical misinformation. They've been doing it a lot to a lot of videos that I feel like are very borderline. So I just want to state in the beginning that I want you to do all of your own research, come up with your own opinions, make your own decisions on whether or not to vax, whether or not to believe this and that. I'm not trying to spread any information other than my own personal opinion, which could very well be extremely wrong. And I also don't believe in a content creator or a person in general who has a platform's onus to inform people correctly. I think that's incredibly narcissistic to say oh, well, I have a platform, so I should be peddling the correct information, whatever the fuck that even means. You know what the correct information is. You're holier than thou, and now you have to force feed it to the masses, because otherwise you're gonna lead them astray because they're all dumbass sheep. I don't subscribe to that idea. So for anyone saying oh my god, this is so harmful because you kind of have a platform and people will listen to you, I just don't believe in that. I'm the first person to tell you to make your own decisions, do your own research, and I'm not gonna hate you if you have a different opinion to mine. That being said, today we're gonna talk about why I am not vaccinated. We're gonna talk about some things that have been really fishy to me, things that just kind of make it not make sense for me to get the vaccine. And we're gonna talk about my experience with having COVID, because I have had COVID, I think probably mostly confirmed at least twice. And I also want to state here, once again, just to be extremely fucking clear, if I say something or if I reference to some certain information, I'm not gonna link it in the description because I don't know the validity of whatever I've read or what I remember. I'm not gonna be super accurate. So if I say something and it sounds wrong or it sounds right and it confirms your bias, please just do research. I am not the person that's going to be informing you on COVID in any way, shape, or form. This is not a medical misinformation video. So anyway, I have not gotten vaccinated because, simply put, I don't think it's possible for science to know how it can affect you down the line to get vaccinated. I also think it's possible that we don't fully know the effects of having COVID, recovering from it, and having long-lasting effects. I've seen some research that would indicate that possibly there's some long-term chest and lung effects or whatever, but I have weighed all of the information that I have seen, and I have done research, and I personally don't want to put something for sure in my body when it hasn't been tested for generations like other vaccines. I'm not an anti-vax person, but I am, for me personally, as a young, healthy person who goes to the gym, I do cardio, I am well suited to getting this and surviving, I've decided that I don't want to get the vaccination, simply because COVID is something that could happen, and side effects from COVID are something that could happen, but putting the vaccine in my body is something that I view as very propagandized by the government and by media. It just doesn't check out, it doesn't feel right, and with the survival rate, I'm willing to take the risk. Now, every single choice you make in your life has some form of inherent risk, and it's within everyone's right to decide what they do with their bodies and weigh those risks personally. See how I'm trying really hard while not having a script to toe this line? I think that old people should probably weigh the risks, and if I were an old person, I would get vaccinated. But on principle too, I've seen a lot of things that really anger me. For instance, Allegiant Stadium doesn't require vaccinations for, let's say, UNLV games. Allegiant Stadium is the stadium here that does the Raiders. But the Raiders require you to have a vaccination, and they do not allow an alternative, which would be a negative COVID test. Now, we all know that if you have the vaccine, you can still get COVID. Most of my friends are vaccinated. All of them have had COVID. Well, not all of them, but most of them have had COVID after getting vaccinated. It happens, it's possible. But listen to this, and this is what makes me feel like it's very, very propagandized and illogical, is they say no COVID test, even though a COVID test within the 24 or 48 hours before you go to a Raiders game would be more effective at telling us you don't have COVID, because it's an objective measure of, do I have COVID right now or do I not? Whereas the vaccine, it seems like they're just trying to push us to get the vaccine because the vaccine can be gotten and COVID can still be gotten. You see what I'm saying? It's very convoluted the way I'm saying this because I'm trying to be careful with my words, but basically a negative COVID test would be more effective in showing that you don't have COVID than just showing your vaccination card and showing that you're vaccinated, because vaccinated people can get COVID. So why are the Raiders and other places like other cities, I know in Colorado at Vail, Breckenridge, I can't eat in the cafeteria style places unless I have a vaccine, but then don't allow the alternative of a negative COVID test? It would make more sense to me if they were like, vaccinated people can come in, because like that's pretty much all we can do to stop this is just have everyone be vaccinated. And it would be like annoying to get the COVID test while also being vaccinated. It's kind of like we're being strict, but we're not being so strict that we think this is like the end of the world. But then they don't allow the alternative of a negative COVID test, which just really makes me feel like it's politicized. Like they're really just trying to push people like, hey, asshole, you can't go to this game unless you're vaccinated. That's how it feels to me, because the logic makes no sense to me. It was like this when I went to San Francisco. I think it's largely like this in Seattle now. I'm not 100% sure on the cities, but a lot of places are adopting this. You have to be vaccinated even though you can still get COVID. You can come in without a negative COVID test, but you don't need to supplement with a negative COVID test, and you can't just alternatively get a negative COVID test. It makes no sense to me. There are places that, in my opinion, are doing it right, at least, by requiring a negative COVID test but not requiring vaccination. I feel like vaccination is such a personal thing. You're making a personal decision, and it can also be turned against you. Like people can use it to kind of almost hate crime on you for not having it. So keeping that private makes sense. And it's also like a personal medical decision, but then just like require everyone to have a negative COVID test so that we know that everyone's there factually does not have COVID because it was taken in the last 24 hours. That's like the best way to do it when you're doing like a social gathering or something. I don't think vaccinations are. And then they keep moving the goalposts. Like for instance, when you get COVID, you were supposed to initially quarantine for 14 days after you had no more negative symptoms or something like that. It was a long time. It was like 2 weeks. Now they're like, oh, 5 days, it's fine. Now, this could totally be that the science has moved. I think science is fluid because we're always learning new things, and I'll get to why the people who would call me anti-vax for not getting a vaccine bother me along these lines of the fluidity of science in a moment, but wait. I get that maybe it changed. Maybe we found out that we don't need to quarantine the full 14 days, but it reeks of really just trying to scare us while also trying to dial it back a little bit so that people can still have their jobs, so that society can still function. It's like they want to hold this over our heads and make it seem scarier and bigger than it is. In a way, it feels this way. In my heart, it feels this way. Like my instincts are kicking in and I'm like, But it could very well be that the science has just changed and now we don't have to worry about it as long. It's so hard, whether you're on the left or the right, it's so hard to, first of all, overcome your biases, but also to actually sift through information and know what's right and what's wrong. And the fact checking on social media is ridiculous. Like, they'll add a fact check warning on things that are correct, and they'll just be like missing context and not tell you what the missing context is. I've seen some really, really vague fact checker warnings on stuff that just shouldn't have it. Another way that I feel like they're moving the goalpost is with the booster shots. At first, it was 2 and you're done, or 1 if you're getting the Johnson & Johnson one. And then it was you need a booster, and now I'm hearing reports, not ridiculous ones, like reports actually from the government. Please look this up. Please find this yourself. Don't just take this from me as fact, but I'm seeing reports that the efficacy after 6 months goes down to like 10% or something of the vaccine. So what, we have to keep getting it every couple months? To me, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the hysteria that it's causing people. I'm looking at the mental health issues. I'm looking at the businesses closing. And then I'm looking at the actual risk of mortality. And I'm saying people are not making the correct risk and reward assessment, at least in my personal opinion. I think people who are afraid should get vaxxed 100 times, however many times the government says that they should. They should keep following the updated science and do whatever they feel is right. And they should stay home and be offered to work from home if the option is available, if they're afraid. But I think everyone else who weighs the risk and reward, everyone else who is healthy and young, should be able to continue to keep their businesses open, should be able to not have mask knee and be continuously breathing in their own CO2 or whatever the fuck. It just feels unhealthy. Like, I feel shitty after a day of wearing a mask. And then on top of that, there's no fucking way anyone is using them correctly. No one is using the correct ones that would actually keep everything out. And even though it might help to wear a mask, no one's washing them. Like, who washes their mask every single use or once a week even? I don't. I pretty much just wear them because I have to. And if I don't have to, I never will. So for me, I agree with the people who say we need to get used to the new normal, but we need to not live in fear 24/7. We need to adapt. I feel like this is probably how it was the first time the flu or the cold came about. Like, people were like, oh my god, a new thing that's kind of killing us. Or probably not, because they had like bubonic plague shit back then and they were like actually dying, and then they got the cold and flu and they're like, this every season, this is fine. I think COVID's here to stay. I think it's largely politicized and used for fear mongering. And I think the best course of action is to fucking live your life, because more people are dying of fentanyl. More people are dying of like crazy shit. More people are dying of suicide in many cases. Again, look up the research, I could be wrong, than of COVID. And I think people should have the choice to be happy and possibly very, very minute possibility of dying of COVID rather than dying of not being able to feed their family because they have no job anymore, or killing themselves because they're so fucking unhappy because they haven't had any social interaction and they're fucking terrified 24/7. For me, it's worth it. Like, if I die of COVID, a lot of people who didn't actually watch this video and don't understand my mindset and don't understand how I assume the risk willingly will be like, haha, dumb bitch didn't get fucking vaccinated and she went out to parties still and she still did things down on the strip and hung out with people. No, if I die of COVID, I assumed that risk and I'm happy with it. And I'm happy that I didn't spend the last 2 fucking years terrified to go out. I'm happy about all the people that I met. Well, kind of happy. I don't really like having friends, but like, I'm happy about all of the experiences I had because I wasn't afraid of COVID. And if I die, then that's what happened and that was the consequence. Fuck it. And that's how I feel. I hope that no one out there is struggling, and I know it can be really, really fucking annoying. Like, imagine watching me say these things to you when you have been in fear of your life for 2 years and doing everything the CDC recommends. Like, imagine how mad you are at me right now. I get that. I fucking get it. Because you're like, she's out and having fun and ruining it for everyone else. But like, honestly, you cannot do anything that requires 90% of the world to follow suit. You just can't. If 90% of the world needs to do something for change, things like climate change too fall along this category, it's not going to happen. So instead of martyring yourself as one of the few, live your life too. And like, do your part, but don't kill yourself over it. If vaccines make sense to you, get it, but don't live in fear. I don't remember which YouTuber it is. Is it Philip DeFranco? I don't remember who. No, it's Mike, the Dr. Mike. He says, what is it, like cautious? It's like a saying that's like, don't be terrified, just be aware. So yeah, me with COVID. I have been sick more times in the last like 2 years than I've ever been in my entire life. Normally I would get sick with either like the flu or a stomach flu like once a year, twice a year max maybe. It is true that since COVID I've been going out more though, because I would like pretty much be a shut-in. But even Mackenzie said this too, like she's been more sick this year than anyone else. I've seen Hunter get sick a bunch of times. It wasn't COVID, but I've seen him get sick a bunch of times. And like, just getting sick is rampant these days. It's really weird. Like, I don't know, I've gotten sick like 6 times, 2 of which I think were probably COVID in the last 2 years. It's crazy. So for me, what I think was COVID was a very, very, very mild cold. One of them was kind of recent and I literally didn't have to spend a day in bed. I felt fine. I didn't even take any medication. I think I just took like a headache pills or something because I had like a mild headache and it was easy to still just get through the day. Mostly what I've had in terms of symptoms is just like really runny nose. And then one of the times when I breathed deeply, I felt like I was in high altitude when I wasn't. And that is still kind of going on with me right now, even though it's been quite a few weeks since that happened to me. But during the time I was still able to like get up, move around, do everything I was supposed to, work in the house and all that. So if those were COVID, and I'm pretty sure they were because people who were around me and got sick as well around that time had confirmed COVID, it's like a milder flu for me. All of the sicknesses that I've had this last 2 years have been like max 1 day in bed, and then all I have to do is take Dayquil and I'm like perfectly fine. It's really weird. So I've gotten like a lot of mild sicknesses that just haven't really mattered that much. I don't know. So yeah, I understand why people get so mad when other people aren't vaccinated, because they think that like if we just band together, we can get rid of this. But I really don't think that's a possibility at all. And I don't think you should take that upon yourself to try to coerce other people with free will, kind of. I don't really believe in free will, but you know what I mean. With their own personalities and their own struggles to make the decision that you made. So I feel like letting go a little bit of that trying to control what other people do, and letting go a little bit of that fear and realizing that like living your life this way is not really living, could be beneficial. Think about it. And also do your best to recognize your biases so that you can kind of filter through the bullshit information. And you got to decide on your own what's bullshit information, because honestly, you really can't trust anyone but your own judgment. So good luck out there. I'm sorry to anyone who lost anyone from COVID. I'm sorry if you disagree with me. Please tell me in the comments if you do. I'm just giving you guys my opinions and telling you what I've been doing and what works for me. My life hasn't stopped. Not once. Because I wouldn't stop my life for a risk that is this tiny. It's just something I would never do. And if I die, so be it. And like seeing some of the stuff that they're doing in Canada, like how they promised that everyone, if they got vaccinated, they could have Christmas and Thanksgiving, remember? And then they kind of took that back like a couple days before. It's crazy that you're not allowed to have your own private gatherings inside in some places. That's not the case here. And I think people are starting to get fed up with it. I think a lot of other people have their risk rewards set a little bit more in favor of the reward and fearful of the risk. And I think people are finally just getting fed up with it, because they're like, okay, you told us 15 days. Okay, the science changed. That's fine. You tried it. It didn't work. Not everyone did it. Whatever. Whoever's fault or whatever the fault is, it didn't work. And that's something you need to accept. And then we move on to it being 2+ years down the road and places are still in lockdown. Businesses still can't open. It's not what I want. I don't know what else to say. I love you guys. Happy Friday. I have some really fun videos coming up. I have one with Hunter. I have a bunch with Mackenzie. You guys really like her, and I think it's because she's a lot like me. Another blonde, also kind of weird, also very honest. Just a genuine person, and that's why I like her. You know I don't get along with girls that often. So I plan on keeping her around, and I hope you guys stay around. Please do try to remain calm in the comments and just like give me your opinions. You can link me articles, you can state me your perceived facts, you can tell me whatever you want. Dissent is welcome, and I hope you're doing okay. I'm gonna give you a virtual hug. I love you so much, no matter your opinion on this.